What's going on? What's going on, my people? I'm Eugene Napoleon. This is Napoleon's Corner. I hope all is well with everybody. Before I get started, please like and subscribe to the channel. I definitely would greatly appreciate your support. This episode is actually episode 168, and the title is Reality versus Social Media. Reality versus social media. And there's a lot that can be said in both parts of this, the reality part of it and obviously social media part of it. But when you put it together, you start to look at a serious issue when it comes to those who kind of put the reality into social media and you make it like as if it's one and the same. In other words, be yourself, not your avatar. Okay. So you see a lot of individuals who they want to escape into this social media world. And that social media game is such an impactful tool. And it's not impactful right now for the right reasons. There's a lot of false narratives that are being put together when you start talking about social media. And it's actually scary. You know, please don't allow social media to impact the reality of your everyday life. And that's what seems to be happening right now, especially with our youth. It's scary because I hear, the young people talk all the time about when you think about what they're searching on social media or the information that they're getting from social media, a lot of it is not true. It's not real. It's fabricated information that our youth run with, and they look at that as if that's the reality of the situation when it's really not. So you have a bunch of false narratives. You have a bunch of false information. You have a bunch of things on these platforms that are really not true. But then you have certain individuals who run with it as if it's the gospel. And that's scary. And here's the thing. We all have different things in our lives that become very hard to manage. You have things in your life that you really got to pay close attention to that are real things, the reality of what's really going on in life. That sometimes I get it. You want to escape. You create an avatar, you get on social media, you get on these different platforms, you create all these different you create these different outlets for you to kind of lose yourself a little bit because the reality of your life is so stressful. You want to de-stress and disconnect. And so you get into the social media piece. Then you find yourself kind of lost because when you jump down that rabbit hole, you start to realize if you misconstrue that with reality, it can be impactful in such a negative way that before you know it, you've lost yourself. You done took a dive down this rabbit hole with a whole bunch of things that are really not true. But because of the stresses in your life, you need to unplug from reality and jump into the social media piece. You got to be real careful with that. Some of this stuff that's created, it's created for a real reason to allow you to dive in head first and kind of lose yourself in that social media world, where the reality is some people find it hard. They would rather listen to something, read something from a social media platform that if they were thinking right and if they were in the right state of mind, they would know that this is not true. But because they're not dealing in reality, they will take that information as if it's the gospel, like I said earlier. We really have to be careful with that. It's as impactful on a negative sense because you have a group of people that will believe that, and that's not good. It's actually scary, especially where we are as a society right now, where you read an article that's posted on a social media platform, and in the article, and I've just saw this a few weeks ago, my wife and I was talking about it. She actually saw it and brought it to my attention, and then I read it. Within the article, there's a piece in the article that talked about the basis of the article was not true, or potentially has not been fact checked. The large portion of it may not be factual. It was actually within the article. You couldn't imagine how many people read that, I guess, kind of jumped over that piece, and the comments were brutal, brutal. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. It says right here that this hasn't been fact checked. Allegedly, some of the pieces of the story may not be true. And yet and still, wow, blew my mind. And it made me realize the impact of that particular story towards that particular individual. Now you're going to have a large part of the country looking at that particular individual like, woof, you know, and that's what I mean. The reality of the situation didn't kick in. It was just what was placed to paint this particular individual in a certain light, and that was the agenda all along. So forget the facts, forget the truth. That was the agenda, and that's what's scary about social media. If there's no reality to it, or you dive in and forget the realness of what's really going on, and you kind of want to lose yourself a little bit, that's the negative impact in what can become a serious problem. We really have to pay attention to that, especially if we have, young kids of age, if they're at the elementary age level, or the middle school age, or even the high school age level. You have to really pay attention to that, and even have a conversation from a comprehension standpoint. When somebody read something on a social media platform, or they're coming to you and asking, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, cousin, whatever, what do you think about this? I saw this on this particular site and it said this, this, or this. And it might be time where we have to sit down and start going over what's factual, what's not factual, what's alleged, what's not alleged, what is the reality of the story or the piece that you just read or saw on social media. I think it's to that point where we really have to do a better job of policing this information, because it really is impacting our society in a way where if we're not careful, it'll be the opposite end of the spectrum for us. The social media will be considered the truth, and the reality will be considered a misnomer, far out to the right somewhere, pushed aside. We can't let that happen. So I'm just saying, pay close attention to that. Please don't let your reality be swapped out for what's going on social media, and we lose ourselves, because it could happen just like that. It's happening now. So like I said in the beginning of this episode, be yourself, not your avatar. I'm Eugene Napoleon. I'll see you next week. Take care.